Chieftain Prep Rally with Jeff Squared. I'm Jeff Letofsky, and this is Jeff Bersch. We're with the Pueblo Chieftain sports staff, and we're going to look at the winter season. It's been a great season so far. We're winding down here in Pueblo and around the Southern Colorado area, Jeff. And I mean, we have teams. Not only are they good teams, but we have teams that are ranked number one in almost every sport.
Best in the state, and we're coming off, a fall where we had, a state football championship and a softball team that made a deep run, and the winter's been pretty special so far. The South boys are number one in basketball. The Pueblo West girls are number one. Pueblo County's wrestling team is number one, and two-time defending state champions there, and
right.
The county swim team I think is number two.
They were number one.
We're number one, yeah. So there's a lot to be excited about here in the winter.
No doubt about it. Let's first talk basketball, since you and I are both pretty involved in that. This has been an interesting season because we really started the season with both South teams and both West teams. Made deep runs last year in the playoffs. The South girls got to the championship game. The West girls got to the Final Four. The South boys got to the Final Four. So there was a lot of expectations with a lot of those players back, and they've sort of lived up to those expectations.
Yeah, especially, like I mentioned, the South boys are number one. They got off to a slow start this year, basically because they didn't have all their players. That deep run to the state football championship definitely cost them a little bit early on. They had a tough loss in a tournament at Golden, without some of those football players. And even when they came back, they were just a little slow to get going. But I think we talked about it earlier today. They've won 9 in a row. They're ranked number one. They're number one in the RPI. The two teams behind them, interestingly, are the two that beat them, Golden and Lewis Palmer. But right. The 9 wins in a row, and they're definitely playing their best basketball at the right time.
And then you talk about the Pueblo West girls, who have really been a little bit of a surprise to me because they lost a few players from last year, but they do have the core of their team back. But only 2 seniors on this team, and you covered the South and West boys and girls games, so you saw both of those. And there was it was a great event. It was done in Masari Arena on the CSU Pueblo campus, and talk a little bit about those 2 games and what those mean for the rest of the season for all those teams.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway was just the crowds that they had there. I mean, it was packed pretty much. You couldn't find a seat if you wanted to that night. But Pueblo West girls went out and very impressive win over South. They controlled the game from the start. I know Olivia Lowe is back for Pueblo West. Right. It's a big deal for them to have her back. And the Cimental girl is obviously having a very good season as well for being as young as she is. Only, yep. And you mentioned the 2 seniors. They are a young team, but I think they're finding themselves as the season goes along too. And they had a couple tough losses early on as well, and right. They're finding their groove and beating South. That is a team that, as you mentioned, made a deep run last year in the postseason, and they've been maybe a little bit of a disappointment, but their schedule is going to allow them to be a pretty high-ranked team in the RPI toward the end of the season, and then they could make some noise on the girls' side.
Right, and then let's talk about a couple other teams in the league. They've gone through the first half of the South Central League season, and we're looking at the second half, and we had some near upsets, and we did have one upset. The Pueblo West boys got knocked off by East, and that's after East lost to Central and Pueblo County. So, I called them Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in my column for tomorrow. East boys, they're a kind of team that could be real dangerous in the postseason because you don't know which team's going to show up, but they have plenty of ability. They have Marcus Winston, who's a high flyer, and they have some guards that can knock down shots. And it's a team I look for them to make a little bit of a run.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that, not that they won against Pueblo West, but maybe that they won in the fashion, because both those teams, you figured, would like to get up and down the court and have athletes like you mentioned, and it was a 40-39 game, and right. East was able to get a late basket by Kane Medrano and came out with that 1-point victory easily. Their most impressive of the season, and that'll go a long way for them. Right. For their ranking in the postseason.
Sure, and really on the girls' side, both East and Pueblo County have had pretty good seasons. East, I got to see them last night, and they have 2 very good players that are capable of scoring some points, and they gave South I mean, they probably should have won that game. If you look back on it, they were down by 10 at halftime. They came out, scored the first 11 points of the third quarter, and now game on.
Yeah.
And it was a great game down the stretch. South was really in control and had a chance to really put the game away, and took a three-pointer. I couldn't understand it with less than 20 seconds to go with the ball and ahead by 2. And they gave East a chance to really actually hit a shot and sent the game into overtime. And then the overtime was a battle. I mean, it was a great atmosphere at the event center last night. And one thing I think we to look for, in these last 5 games in the South Central League, there could be an upset here.
Yeah.
Here or there in both the boys and girls side. Because Centennial boys are playing pretty well too.
It's one of those things, these teams, they're all from Pueblo and they all know each other so well.
Right.
The coaches have coached against each other and the players have played against each other, and whether it's organized or probably pick up games over the summer, whatever it might be, they know each other's games well, and it definitely shows in the competitiveness of every game.
Right. We mentioned the wrestling teams. We both have East and Pueblo County are both in the mix. They've been battling in tournaments, and really it's getting to that time of year where we got to cut some weight and do some things to get ready for the regionals, because the regionals it's a one-time shot, man. If you don't perform in the regionals, you don't go to state.
That's a tough thing for those kids to have that one shot.
And then swimming's sort of winding down. I'm getting to the point where it's going to be a South Central League meet is this weekend. It's Friday and Saturday, and they're doing the same thing. They're tapering. Tapering. That's a swim word. Getting ready for their regional, their state competition. And I guess the last thing we want to touch on is hockey. I mean, hockey's been it really hasn't been a factor, probably in the last decade here in Pueblo. They've had some good teams here and there, but this team this year has, they broke into the top 10. Mm-hmm. I think they got it high as number 8 or 9, and then this last week they dropped a couple games, and then one of the biggest hockey events we've had maybe since hockey was brought to Pueblo. Last night against, of course it has to be Valley Christian.
Yeah, it was a packed house over at the ice arena, and unfortunately Pueblo County lost 8-0. But yeah, they're 12-3. I'd expect them to obviously make the playoffs, and I think they won a game last year. They can certainly do that. But they are, when they do run into these better teams, Valor and Cherry Creek and Monarch, and I think they find out that they're not quite up to that quite yet. They're getting there though. Right. I mean, even last night it was 8-0, but it was 2-0 after the first period, and they came out the second period and had some chances early to get a goal that may have changed things. But in the end, it's tough for them. I know to go out and lose 8-0 to Valor. They get them again Saturday, have another opportunity, and finish the season against Cherry Creek. So they're going to find out kind of where they're at before they get into the postseason.
And really, it's a process with Coach Lee, we'll call him. And he's really done a great job with this program, and you got to take baby steps before you become really a factor, maybe in the final 8. I mean, that's sort of what hockey in this state is obviously not as big as some of the northern states, and maybe a little bit behind. Mm-hmm. But some of the teams up north are really good, and really try to break in that top 8. It's going to take a couple of years, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I've talked to Lee a couple times this season, and he thinks they're around a 5 or 6, somewhere around that in the state. But the difference even between that to those top 3 or 4 teams is pretty substantial. And if they can get in and win a couple games, I think that'd be a great season for them. Even if they see someone like Valor again and were to lose. But they've had a good season, and it's been a fun season to be around Pueblo County hockey.
Right. So we're in the dog days of winter. Really, we're winding down, and the playoffs are right around the corner. And it's been a great winter so far, and we're looking forward to the spring, aren't we, in baseball and getting outside and doing that kind of stuff. But until then, we'll talk about some of the playoff scenarios the next couple weeks, and we'll get the state tournament going and all these sports, and it'll be interesting. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeff Letofsky. This is Jeff Bersch with Jeff Squared. Have a great day.